So this is the automated linear saw that I built it to process the boards that come off my sawmill. On a sawmill, I cut a lot of live edge. With live edge, I can get more wood out of a smaller tree, or trees that have more taper to them, which I cut a lot of ponderosa pine, and you tend to, especially down near the bottom, get a lot of taper. So you get a large wide board out of that with a live edge that otherwise, if you do a cant, you would cut off. I also produced a router attachment for it, and with that router attachment I've been making some siding. Good enough. Now, so you can cut a lap side like this, or pretty much any bit you can get for it. And it's kind of what a finished piece comes out before it's put on the house. This is a board I'm going to saw and put a straight edge on. And as you can see, it has a live edge. Neither edge has been dressed. And there's not much board here, actually. This is a little low even for my standards, but there's probably a 1x4 that's about 6 foot long that'll come out of here that'll be pretty nice. And all the scraps, well, they're firewood. They'll keep me warm. Just basically put it under the clamps. There's a witness mark here that I can use to set up where to put the board. It's not all that critical because you can always cut it again. So there's the other side of that board, and as you can see, nice and straight. I didn't have to hold the saw. I didn't have to run down a table saw and have a 12-foot long table. Some of this will come out in plain, some of it won't. And it's perfectly straight. I've installed the router on the slide now. Basically, the router is spring-loaded outward and has a follower bit with a bearing on it, so it'll follow the edge of the board. And then it just has a latch so you can pull it back and get it out of the way of the board to send the carriage home. I'm going to start doing some siding. So these are two slides I'm going to use to make this linear saw. There's some industrial surplus I picked up. They're belt driven, so there's a gear on this end and there's a belt in there to move the carriage. They're both the same. This one's 9 foot long, this one's about 4 foot long, and I want one that's at least 12 foot long. So I'm going to combine these together to make one long slide. And that's what the saw will be moved by and rest on. Okay, there we go, all taken apart. So what we have left is an aluminum extrusion. You can see with the track here where the carriage rides in these 3 grooves here. We got a carriage. These end pieces just have a pulley in there and then a bumper, and the belt rides around the pulley. Obviously a belt. There's a magnets here to hold this dust strip down. So that's just inserted along it. And a plethora of other little pieces that go on the carriage and hold the belt and such. I'm cutting up this pallet rack to get this 4-inch channel to use to make legs for the saw. I'm drilling holes now for the, this is the plate that will attach to the slide, and there's a T-slot track underneath there, so I'm drilling 4 15/16 holes for the, it's actually a carriage bolt that will go through the T-slot and hold this in place. I'm going to put one of the set of legs on. So they just mount to these bolts. These are T-slots. And I got some 5/16 carriage bolts that I just ground the sides off a little bit. And they slide up and down and they're just perfect. And we'll use that to mount this leg. Okay, I'm going to start putting these plates on, the ones we just made. So we're going to use the carriage bolts that I just put those flats on. They slide in this T-slot so they're trapped and they can hold together. And it just goes on the side here. And here's the carriage. Fits in there. Right through the transition, nice, smooth. Everything's in straight alignment. Okay, with it all bolted together, everything's in alignment. It's also very rigid. So it's nice and solid. Now I can move these legs out onto this section and start working on getting the belt in here and the end caps to move the carriage. Alright, I'm going to feed this belt in now. The way this slide works, the belt returns on the bottom here. It goes around the end pulley down there, and then it connects up here to the top. So I'm just going to put the belt in, run it through the carriage, and pull it down. So now it's going to be too long because of the way, how much extra you need to go around the pulleys, and I added 2 together. So now I'll put this end cap on, I'll attach one side to the carriage and figure out the length I need, cut it, and attach the other end. So you can see how slack the belt is. So I'll just keep tightening these up evenly on each side until we bring it up so that, certainly so it doesn't hit down on the bottom side. It doesn't need to be like a banjo string or anything. So here's a splice, and this is the idler end, and the way it's set up, this splice will always go over the idler pulley, not over the driven pulley. But you can see it goes over just fine. So I scrounged through what motors I had, and this one seems to be about the best fit. It's a DC gear motor, 120 volt, with a 38 to 1, well, 38 RPM output shaft. So should work well. I can reverse it. DC should reverse just by switching the leads with a relay. And 38 RPM on the output's pretty good. 8 horsepower, should have plenty of torque to drive a slide down. Changing out this chain drive. I've decided that I need something that can give in this system in case the saw gets caught on a piece of scrap or something else goes wrong. So the easiest thing is going to be to change this to a belt. You can set the belt up. If it really gets into something, the belt should slip. I put a breaker on this motor too. It's a 5 amp breaker. The motor draws about 1 amp. It's probably a little big. Maybe it needs to be a little smaller, but those are my 2 fail safes for if something jams the saw moving forward. We'll put the belt on here, and then I have that breaker installed on the motor drive circuit. Wow, from a simple little trying to stop it test, it's got plenty of torque, so it should have no problem moving a saw, router, or anything down there. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I dug through my bin of relays and switches and kind of came up with this that I'm going to use to control it. So I've got this little, it's kind of like a little controller PLC, but it's really basic and I've never used one. It's called a T6, so I'm going to try that. It's got 4 outputs and 6 inputs, so that's enough. I got some switches, some industrial switches that I had in a box, so I got enough there. I've got one for auto and manual and one for on and off, and then a couple push buttons for forward cycle, reverse cycle, and manual jog each direction. I'm going to use some relays to reverse the motor and one to start and stop the saw. So they're double throw single pole relays, so I'll use 2 of them to do reverse and starting and stopping on the slide, and the other one I'll use to start and stop the motor. And that should all work. They all DIN rail mount all these, so I'll put a little DIN rail in this wood box I just made, and that'll be our controls. So I'll put all that together here. Got the control box. There's a panel that just came out of the router. I'm going to paint down inside the grooves. That's why I put contact paper on there. And then I'll fit it up and put the switches in. I'm just painting in the lettering on the control panel. And after it dries a little bit, I'll pull these contact paper mask off. And it might take a little cleanup, but it'll be way easier than trying to deal with painting these individual letters. So I finished up the control panel, put the switches in it, and put the electronics in the control box. So now I'm putting some holes in the back for some cord grips for the limit switches and the motor wire that will have to come out of here, and the power cord. So I bought a couple screw clamps, and I'm going to take them apart and use one half for one clamp and the other half for another clamp. And they'll make a toe clamp. This is one that's mostly complete. So it's got a block under here that'll slide down in the frame where the wood's held, and then you can screw it down to clamp it in place. So I'm taking this guy apart, and I'll make 4 of them out of two clamps. Putting together these clamps that are going to be the hold downs. So this is the step block I made. They're 3/4 inch steps, 1/2 inch tall. And here's kind of what it's going to look like when it's done. I made up some of these brackets, and it allows that foot to adjust to any size, or you can take it up and get it out of the way. And of course you can't lose it or throw it away. So it's just a simple couple screws. Take this and set it here. One in here. Got that screw a little tight. Put one on the other side. That one will be ready. I'll put them on the saw. So here I've got one of these stops finished. So it's half of a parallel clamp, and it's got this block I made that'll slide up to whatever thickness you're working on, or you can get it out of the way if you wanted to do something thinner, or you just need the whole bed and more room. You can unscrew it and take it off completely. Comes out of there. So it seems to work pretty well. There's 4 of them along the entire trowel. And they slide in and out so you can decide where to grab the board. So I just finished up machining some parts to hold the saw to the carriage of the slide. And so this is the saw I'm going to use. It's a 7 1/4 inch old Craftsman saw, but it has a nice metal case which should be easy to mount to. So the way this is going to go together, there's 2 mounting points here, and I've got 2 shafts. It's going to allow that saw to move in and out from the slide. So the first thing I'm going to do is put this shaft on. And this shaft is just a piece of 3 1/4 inch shafting, but I milled a slot or a flat down one side. And that's because it's going to have a lock collar to hold it in position. Gives us somewhere to put the collar set screw that won't mar up the shaft, so that it can still slide through the this block that it's going to attach to. So I'm just going to put that on kind of loose, and then we'll start assembling it on the slide. Okay, so the saw just goes in here, this shaft, and there's a collar that goes in the middle here. And then it's got the collar, we can lock it down. So I can set the saw out as far out as I need to, lock the collar in place. That way if there's a board with a big curve in it or something, you can get a straight edge on it still. But for right now, I'm going to put the saw all the way in. Lock the collar down. So now I can move up and down. Now I'm ready to put on the back mount back here. So again, we'll start out with another rod. Goes on right back here. Right like this. It's good enough for now. It has another little adapter piece here with just a threaded hole. What this is going to allow us to do is adjust the height. So for right now, this piece here just goes on the end of this adapter plate. Flip this back over. You can see it allows you to adjust the saw height. And when you loosen the locking collar, they'll both slide in and out on there. So for right now, I'll just set the saw up here out of the way so that I can put the outriggers on that will hold the board. There it is. Loosen the collar, push it out. Long term, I'll make some knobs so you don't yet have to use tools. But that's far enough for now.